Jury is not present. Ms. Arias, earlier today and last week, a number of times there's been an objection that your answers were non-responsive. I'm going to ask that you listen very carefully to the questions and answer the question you are being asked.
Yes.
Let's bring in the jury.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue with direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Arias, before we broke for lunch, we were talking about how you were considering whether or not to move or stay at Big Sur or move on. And when you started talking about, excuse me, when you started talking about moving on, you said there was a compelling reason to move on. What was that compelling reason?
Do you mean move on or move geographically?
Well, move on and leave Big Sur.
Oh, move on geographically. Well, there were already plans. Travis and I were making plans for me to move to Mesa. He was very upset when I moved to Big Sur. He wanted me to either go to Mesa or stay in Southern California, but not move so far. So I had already made my commitments in Big Sur. I decided to fulfill those. They were expecting me. And so the season wasn't panning out to what it was, so I gave my notice there. And my last day was going to be sometime in June or July, I don't remember when. And I was making plans to move to Mesa. And then I discovered that he was cheating on me, so plans kind of halted. I was going to move in with my friend Rachel, and I kind of told her that, you know, what was up. I didn't want to throw Travis under the bus, so I didn't go into a lot of detail, but I said that things weren't really working out with him, and, you know, things aren't working out up here either, and she was encouraging me to come to Mesa anyway. Kind of make it my Mesa, don't worry about Travis. And then Travis was also trying to...
Let's just stop a minute and clarify. You had planned to move to Mesa before you went to Big Sur in the summer, right?
Yes, in the spring we began to talk about that.
And once you found out he was cheating on you, you then made the decision to go to Big Sur. Is that right?
No, I moved to Big Sur prior to all of that.
Okay. And then you were planning on staying at Big Sur until you had this conversation with him where he started being loving towards you. Is that right?
The original plan was to stay in Big Sur, fulfill the commitments I made, and then move to Mesa.
Okay, and what were the commitments in terms of time?
In terms of time, about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Okay. So you fulfilled your commitment. Why did you decide then, getting to my point, why did you decide then that moving to Mesa would be a good idea, considering what had happened prior?
Well, I was on the fence about it. I was going to move to Montclair. There was another woman that I worked with at the Big Sur Bakery that was moving there, and that's closer. That's in Southern California. It's close to where I used to live. It's within an hour's drive of Palm Desert. So there were two choices, and I decided to go to Mesa. Travis painted a nice picture of all of the benefits of moving to Mesa. He said it's a strong Mormon community. There are a lot of church members. There are always other LDS single women looking for roommates. He said I can store all of my things at his house. He said I could sock away more money. Just benefits.
Benefits to you or benefits to him?
To us both. Well, he was painting the benefits that I would reap if I moved there.
Did you believe that he was also seeking benefits?
Of course, yeah. He said we could hang out more and figure things out.
Hang out and figure things out. Did hanging out involve sexual activity?
Yes.
When you moved to Mesa, how far from Travis were you?
I don't know mileage, and I don't know if you know Mesa, but Travis lived over by Signal Butte and Elliott, and I lived over by Greenfield and Broadway.
Well, do you have any idea how long it took you to drive to Travis's house?
Well, depending on traffic, 15 minutes,
Okay.
maybe 20.
So you live about 15 minutes away. We heard other witnesses testify, tell us about what a ward was. Where you lived, was that in the same ward as Mr. Alexander?
No.
Was that an issue for him, to your understanding?
It became an issue.
Why, to your understanding, was that a concern?
Well, as soon as I moved in with Rachel, about, I'd say within a week and a half, she approached me and informed me that she and...
Actually, here's not a response to the question, what was an issue?
Rephrase the question.
Well, let's do it this way then. You mentioned a person named Rachel. Is that who you moved in with originally?
Yes, and her boyfriend.
Okay. And how long did you live with Rachel and her boyfriend?
About a week and a half.
And
I'm sorry, like 2.5 weeks.
okay. And after this 2.5 week period, it's time for you to move on for their personal reasons. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, they eloped.
Okay. So they got married, and it was time for you to find a new place to live, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they were newlyweds.
And you said the issue of ward boundaries or what wards you're going to be in became an issue. Could you explain that to us?
Yes. It became imperative that I move out as quickly as possible. They were going to have another civil wedding ceremony after eloping in Vegas. So what I did was I went to, I think it was an institute center, which is a place where young single adults in the church can go for scripture study and things like that. There was a bulletin up there with different places for rent. So I wrote down a few phone numbers that were within my price range. I called a girl. I think she lived in Gilbert. She said that that listing was old and no longer available, but she directed me to ldshousing.net and said that I could find more listings there. So I went there and I found a few within my price range. I called them all. 2 returned my call. One was a girl named Brenda, and she lived in Gilbert. She had a brand new house. She said she was looking for a roommate. She had not moved into the house yet because she was in the process of buying it, and the mortgage lender hadn't funded yet, and so she didn't have her keys yet. But we went by the house together, peeked in the windows. You know, she showed me around the property. It was brand new. It had never been lived in. It was in a really great ward. She said everyone in the ward is really awesome. So I was excited about that. But then the days kept going on, and she wasn't getting her keys, and Rachel and her new husband were like, you know, they kind of wanted their own space. So I went to ldshousing.net again. I called back the same number as before, not Brenda's, but the other one. And she called me back and said that there is a room available for rent. So I went and checked it out. The house was nice. It was in a great neighborhood. It was available immediately. It was within my price range. And I asked her which ward it was in. She told me it was in the University 6th Ward, which was not the ward that Travis was in at the time.
Why did you ask her what ward it was in?
I didn't want to land.
What's that?
I didn't want to land in the same ward as Travis.
Why not?
Well, one, I figured he didn't treat me very well at church when I was his girlfriend. He ignored me. He didn't introduce me. He flirted with other women. So I figured if he was capable of treating me that way as his girlfriend, who knew what other kinds of humiliating behaviors he was capable of now that we were exes, I didn't want to show up at his ward like that.
Okay. And to your understanding, did he not want you in his ward as well?
We had talked about it, yes. He said now that we're not together.
You're saying, and the question is whether or not she knows if you wanted her there or not.
To your understanding, did Mr. Alexander want to make sure that you were in a different ward?
I don't know if he went that far. We just discussed going to different wards.
Okay. Now, this home that you moved to after you went through your housing search, after you left Rachel's home, in terms of, let's just use the marker of time, how far away was this from Travis's house?
You're talking about Rachel's house or the new house?
The new house.
It was a lot closer. I didn't know at first. I was still using my...
Objection, she's already answered the question.
Sustained.
You say a lot closer. How long a drive was it to Travis's house from where you wound up after you moved out of Rachel's place?
I would say 10 minutes or less, depending on the route.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you and Travis, and can you give us a ballpark in terms of the time we're talking about here, month and year, when you've moved into this new place?
Yes. I believe it was the middle of August 2007.
And at this point in time, I know that you had told us that you ended your relationship with Mr. Alexander, at least from a formal standpoint or from a label standpoint. You broke up as boyfriend and girlfriend. But he was telling you all these loving things, and you kind of back in good graces anyway. Were you his girlfriend at this time in August of 2007?
No.
When you moved back to Mesa, regardless of where you lived, was the sexual relationship still ongoing?
It was ongoing.
Were you acting as a couple in public?
No. We were even more clandestine.
More clandestine.
Yes.
And this clandestine sexual relationship, where was this by and large happening?
At his house.
And how would it generally work? Would you come over at a certain time? How did that work?
Typically, this cycle began to develop where there would be a fight, and then we would make up, and it would turn sexual, and then everything would be okay for a little while.
Now, the sexual relationship you were having with Mr. Alexander in the summer of 2007, did this include oral sexual contact?
Yes.
Anal sex?
Eventually, but I'm trying to remember if we did that summer. It was around that time, but I don't remember exactly when.
And did it include penile vaginal intercourse?
Eventually. It did one time, actually, that month.
Okay. Now, when you moved back to Mesa, did you find a job?
I did finally toward the end of August, and not right away, but I did.
And where were you working?
At P.F. Chang's.
And apart from P.F. Chang's, did you have any other sources of income?
Yes.
What was that?
Travis offered to pay me to clean his house.
And was there a set upon hourly wage for that?
Yes. He was going to pay me $200 extra a month to come over twice a week. I can't remember how many hours, but when you did the math, it equaled $12.50 an hour.
Okay. And you were also having a sexual relationship with him at this time, right?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor? Jodi, I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 395. Could you take a look at that? See if you recognize that.
Yes.
What is that?
It's an email he sent me.
Regarding what?
This is kind of a joke about my uniform for cleaning his house.
Your uniform what? For cleaning his house?
Yes.
What did he want you to wear?
He wanted me to wear one of those French maid outfits.
And do you remember when he sent you this email?
It would have been sometime in early August.
Move to admit Exhibit 395, excuse me if I said 393 earlier.
No objection to the photographic portion of the email, but objection to the hearsay or the written comment.
Approach.
Jodi, let's back up a step. When Mr. Alexander proposed this arrangement to you in August of '07, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Did you accept this arrangement?
I hesitated, but when he said it's $200 extra a month, I said yes, because I needed money.
Okay. And at the time you accepted this offer Mr. Alexander made to you, were you still sexually active with him?
Yes.
when you were cleaning the house, working as his maid, if you will, did he ever express a desire to have sex with you while you were working for him?
Objection to the characterization of a maid.
Occasionally.
And how did you feel about that? You're there to clean his house, and he's having sex with you.
It didn't bother me. We were still intimate. He's paying attention to me. He's being nice. He's focused on me, making me feel attractive. So it wasn't unpleasant.
Did he ever ask you to wear a particular uniform?
Yes.
How would you describe that uniform for us?
The picture he sent me was of a woman, a voluptuous woman with long blonde hair, a low-cut French-made outfit. She had stockings that went up to her thighs, stilettos. It was a black and white outfit with a little white apron. I think she had her foot up on something.
Julie, I'm going to show you a picture from Exhibit 395.
Objection. This is not an evidence. It cannot be published to the jury.
You just didn't object to it a few minutes ago.
Counsel approach, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to stand in place, we have about 2 minutes, and you're welcome to do so. and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that you go back to the jury room, use your card to let yourselves in. We will be back with you shortly. I don't know what's happened. I'm going to go and find out. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Exhibit 395.001 is admitted. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jodi, before our break, you talked about a picture you received in an email. If I may approach, Your Honor.
Okay.
Of a woman in a French maid uniform. Do you recognize that as being that picture?
Yes.
I would move it into evidence form. It's not an
That was
action.
just an edit.
Okay.
It is an edit.
When you received this email from him, was this before or after you began working for him?
It was after we made the agreement, but before I started.
How did you feel in receiving this?
I just kind of laughed. I think he meant it as a joke.
You felt like he meant it as a joke.
Yes.
Did your feelings on that subject change when he was having sex with you while you were supposedly working for him?
Well, on the uniform, no, but as far as the implication, I mean, I kind of knew that was implied sometimes.
That was kind of implied sometimes, meaning if he was paying you to clean his house and you were available to have sex with him, that was part of the deal?
Objection, we
Rephrase.
Did you believe when you were working for him, that because you were working for him, he's entitled to have sexual access to you?
I wouldn't say that. I needed money. We were already
objection,
intimate.
Ms. Scott, she said she would say that.
Sorry.
Ask another question.
Why did you not feel that way?
I was already intimate with him, and I had feelings for him, so it wasn't. It didn't. I didn't correlate the two. Usually, I stuck with my duties there. It was generally during the day. He worked also. I didn't want to distract him from that. Sometimes he would come to me, or he would bump into me suggestively and say, "Oh, excuse me," and then it would happen again, and then it would lead to something. Sometimes he would just come up and kiss me.
Okay. How long did you clean his house, work as his maid?
Almost the entire time that I lived in Mesa.
Okay. Did he always pay you?
He always paid me in one form or another.
What do you mean by that?
Sometimes, well, it was usually cash. But sometimes, well, we went on trips together, so sometimes we always split the trips 50-50. He kept meticulous track of the cost. He could always figure it down to the dollar, who owed who what, and how we reached the figure. So sometimes if he owed me money for the house, he would just eat the cost on traveling.
Okay. But there was always financial compensation for this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, earlier today, you mentioned that when you moved back to Mesa, there was a clandestine sexual relationship that went on behind closed doors of his bedroom.
Yes.
Right? Was there a sexual relationship that took place in other places besides just his bedroom?
Yes.
Where did those occur?
Usually when we...
Recommendation, time or date when this happened.
Sustained.
Where else did you have sexual interaction with Mr. Alexander?
Sometimes it was...
Same objection. We just need to know when.
Well,
Overruled.
Answer the question.
Sometimes it was in my car, in parking lots. Sometimes it was when we traveled, and sometimes it was at my house in Mesa.
now when you mentioned your car, earlier in your testimony you told us about the interaction that took place after he gave you the Book of Mormon and you went to Starbucks. Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about other occasions in your car?
Other occasions, but the same kind of thing.
And did those also occur after you moved back to Mesa, or did those occur before you moved to Mesa?
I know they occurred after I moved to Mesa.
You also mentioned that sexual behavior was going on through these trips you took with him as well, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you also mentioned your house in Mesa. Is that the one you shared with Rachel, or are you speaking to the other home that you moved into a couple weeks later?
The other home. He wouldn't go to Rachel's house.
Is there a specific location in this home that your sexual behavior with Travis took place?
Yes, in my bedroom.
Did it happen anywhere else besides your bedroom?
Yes. A couple times. He...
Where did these occur? Besides your bedroom, where in your home?
The front porch.
And how did you wind up having sexual encounters with Travis on his front porch? On your front porch, excuse me.
It was something he wanted to try since I had known him since 2006. It was something he expressed that he wanted to do. He had a list of fantasies that he wanted to fulfill. And he wanted to show up, get out of his car. Sorry.
Ask another question.
No need to apologize, Jodi. What was this? Describe for us, if you will, this fantasy he had involving you being on the porch of your home.
Okay. It was, he wanted to drive up to the house. Something we couldn't do it in Palm Desert, so now that I was in Mesa, it was a different kind of porch. It was more private. There was a huge column, a big square stucco column that offered more privacy. There was a big bush that created a shadow from the street light, so this would occur at night, late at night. And so he wanted to drive up to the home. He wanted to get out of the car, have me come out of the house, give him oral sex, and he wanted to ejaculate on my face and then get back in his car and drive away without saying a single word.
And were you to be dressed during these interactions or naked, or what was his fantasy?
I was dressed.
And how many times did he do this?
2 or two or three times. I can only remember 2 specifically.
Tell us about those 2 occasions. Tell us about the first occasion.
Well, the first occasion occurred just like I described, and we talked later the next day. The second occasion, after he was done, he dropped something near me and got into his car and left. And so I picked up whatever it was he dropped and took it inside to find out what it was.
What was it?
It was Toblerone.
So he ejaculated on your face and threw you some candy?
Pretty much.
Is this hard for you to describe?
Yeah, in front of my mom and dad it is.
You mentioned that Mr. Alexander had other fantasies that he described for you. Can you tell us another one of those fantasies?
He wanted to do the mile high, which we never did. He wanted to pull off of a freeway on a remote highway somewhere and have sex on the hood of the car, which we didn't do. But he also wanted to have sex on the freeway while driving, which we did. It was the 10 or the 40. We were driving east across Texas.
Oral sex?
No, I think it was vaginal.
What other fantasies did he have?
He wanted me to wear the boys' underwear. He had a lot of anal sex fantasies. He wanted me to wear the boys' underwear and have anal sex, and he wanted to wear his, he had a lot of nice suits because he was in prepaid legal, and he had tailored shirts with his initials stitched into the cuffs, and he wanted me to perform oral sex on him in his office while he was wearing those suits.
And did you comply with that desire?
Yes. Yeah, that one we did many times. Probably his whole wardrobe.
Now we were talking about the boys' underwear and anal sex. Is this the boys' underwear that you received back on Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Did he ever explain to you why he wanted you to wear this underwear and why he wanted to have anal sex with you when you were wearing this underwear?
He just said it was hot.
He didn't offer any other explanation at the time?
Not at that time.
Okay. You mentioned, well, let me ask you this. How did you feel about having anal sex with Travis when you were wearing this boy's Spider-Man underwear?
Well, after we began to do that more regularly, he used lubrication that time so it wasn't painful. And I don't know. I guess there were times when I enjoyed being with him, so I was willing to do. I enjoyed making him happy, so I was willing to do things that he liked to do. And while he did those things that he liked to do, he was paying attention to me, so I got something out of it too, I guess, in that regard.
Okay. So, based on what you're telling us, are you saying that he treated you differently before, during, and after these encounters, or just before and during? You said he was paying a different amount of attention to you. Can you maybe describe for us what you mean by that?
Yes. When he was in the mood or turned on, then he was very nice and paid attention to me. Sometimes when we got together, he was very loving and romantic. Sometimes it was just animalistic. Afterward, usually when he was done for a while.
You mean done sexually or done being nice?
Done, he didn't turn mean, but done being nice, I would say.
Okay. And then would it be fair to say that when he wanted sex again, he became nice?
Always.
Once you moved back to Mesa, you were having this clandestine sexual relationship. And you weren't his girlfriend, right?
Yes, that's right.
Why was this okay with you?
I guess I was still in love with him, and I would go on dates occasionally with other people, but there was no spark there, I think because Travis had my heart, and I'm a monogamous person, so I'm sleeping with Travis, so there's not really any room in my heart or my mind or in my life. That wasn't making room for anybody else. So that's kind of just how it continued.
So was there ever any thought in your head, this isn't right, I need to stop this relationship?
There were times when it seemed very unhealthy, and I did have those thoughts.
Did you ever vocalize those thoughts to Travis?
Eventually I did, yes.
Let's talk about this time period as well, because you mentioned you were traveling with Mr. Alexander even after you moved back to Mesa. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And after you moved back to Mesa in late summer of 2007, where did you and Travis travel to? What were some of the destinations you went to?
Well, first we went to Las Vegas for the convention, which was in early September again. I went to the executive director banquet with him again. And after that, the weekend following Las Vegas, there was going to be another recap, but we ditched that and went with Dan and Desiree to Havasu Pie.
Okay. Where else did you go?
In October, we went to New Mexico, to Albuquerque for the balloon fiesta. We went to Santa Fe to 10,000 Wave Spa. We saw Route 66. There might have been another place. These were all places that were in the book, 1,000 Places. We began calling it the list, so we were just checking places off the list.
And that was kind of motivating your travel to these spots, is that correct?
Yes.
Before we get too far down the road to other places you traveled, I want to show you what's been marked. Exhibits 434 and 431. Be so kind to take a look at these. And what you recognize, Exhibit 434 to be?
That's Travis and I at the Executive Director Banquet in March 2007.
And Exhibit 431?
That's Travis and I at the Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque.
And when was that?
That would be October 2007.
I would move to admit Exhibits 431 and 434.
No objection.
431 and 434 are admitted.
Now, you just mentioned the Executive Director's Ball in 2007. Is this what we're seeing here?
Yes.
Is it hard for you to look at that picture?
Objection.
Approach. Overruled.
Why?
It's just very sentimental. It's about happier times. When you just look back, you don't think that it would end up the way it did.
Let me show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 431. You take a look at that, please. Is that hard to look at?
Yeah.
Why?
We had a really bad fight that morning, but it turned out better, and we had a pretty good day afterward.
How long was this trip?
I think just the weekend. I don't recall specifically. It wasn't very long.
Based on the picture, one might assume that you were acting as a couple during this trip. Is that true?
Yes.
Did that end when you got back to Mesa?
Yeah, it did. Well, it depends on the time.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I was still coming over to his house. His roommate tried to warn me that he was seeing other people. So, I mean, it was...
Well, what I was asking you is if this public affection, that sort of thing, ended when you got back to Mesa.
Yes, it did, unless we were in his room.
Okay. So affection was okay so long as you were in his room or on your porch where he was ejaculating on your face, right?
Well, yeah, but the latter wasn't really affection that much.
Okay. That brings up a good point. You come out on the porch, you fulfill his fantasies, he ejaculates on your face and throws some chocolate at you. How do you feel after that?
I couldn't help thinking that it was kind of like a prostitute. But I didn't. I put that out of my mind and just chalked it up to one of his little antics that he did.
Chalked it up to one of his little antics.
Yes.
Was there ever a point in time in your mind that you said, enough of these little antics, I'm done with this guy?
Maybe farther down the road, but before that, no.
Not at that point in time.
No, if anything, we increased.
The what?
If anything, we increased with those kinds of things, the antics, all that. If you can call them antics.
Well, let me ask again something I asked earlier. Had he been physically abusive with you up to this point in time, late summer of 2007?
No.
Okay.
Well, he grabbed my wrist one time, but I didn't consider it abusive, so I don't know. That's
Well, when did that occur?
at the convention in Oklahoma City in March 2007.
Describe those circumstances for us.
He and I were hanging out at the Sheraton. This was 2 nights after the drunk lady fell all over him. And so we were just hanging out with other colleagues and friends. And I had to use the restroom, so I went to the same restroom that I ran to a few nights before. It's sort of by a bar that's at the lobby. And so this is Saturday night now. And by Saturday night, a lot of people are partying. Convention's over. Everyone's going to leave Sunday. So there were a lot of people. There was a big crowd, a lot of people that were drinking and just having fun and being social. And as I was making my way back through the crowd, I heard somebody call my name. And I stopped and looked around to see who it was. And it was Abe, the guy I had gone on a date with some months earlier. And we talked briefly. And I don't remember if he had heard about what happened or if I told him about what happened, but he just was listening, and he said, "You deserve better," and I said, "Thanks." I said, "It's okay," that kind of thing. So then we parted, and I made my way back through the crowd, and I was leaving the crowd, and I saw Travis standing at the edge of the crowd, waiting for me, and I just smiled as I walked up to him and went to grab his hand, and his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist instead.
Was he angry with you?
He seemed upset, but not at first. He didn't seem incredibly angry until he started talking, and then I realized he was pretty mad.
Okay. How did he you said he grabbed your wrist. Did he grab it hard, or was he just holding it?
He grabbed it hard, but not painfully.
Did it ever become painful?
Not at that moment. He was just squeezing very tightly, but it didn't hurt.
And you said that he was not that angry at that time, but later you understood him to be more angry. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, as soon as he began to talk, I could tell he was pissed off.
And how could you tell that? Without telling us what he said, how could you tell that?
By his demeanor, his tone, his words. And
Was he yelling?
no, he was kind of speaking very sternly, sort of under his breath.
Okay. And was he unhappy with the fact that you were talking to Mr. Abdallah?
Yes, he was. Well, he wanted to know what we were talking about.
Okay. And when you learned what you were talking about, is that when you became more angry?
Yes.
Okay. And you were talking about the idea that you deserve better, right?
Yes.
Okay. Moving back then to you being in Mesa and the sexual encounters, you said they were happening more frequently. Was this on a daily basis, a near daily basis?
I'd say 3 to 4 times a week.
And apart from those instances on the porch, you mentioned instances of his home. How did that work?
If it was the middle of the day and nobody was home, then there wasn't as much of a need to keep it a secret or keep it within the confines of the bedroom. But if people were home and his roommates were home, we had to be very quiet. He used to complain that his house was made a KB home and that the walls were thin and his roommates could hear every sound, so we had to be quiet.
So it was pretty obvious to you that your presence there in the home was a secret to his roommates, right? Supposed to be.
Well, maybe our activities. I parked right in the driveway.
Okay. So it wasn't your presence in the home, it was the fact that he was having sex with you that was the secret.
Yeah.
Okay. Were precautions made? You mentioned daytime. Sometimes this happened at night as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were there precautions made for you getting out the next morning? Did you stay the night? How did that work?
I usually stayed the night, but I left pretty early.
Was that intentional to avoid the roommates, knowing you spent the night?
Yes, because, well, usually, yes.
Okay. Did you know, well, this, using, I'm a,
It's on occasion with people from his church. Sometimes I'd go on group dates, but I definitely didn't have the impression that he was in a committed relationship with anybody.
and you've told us just a few moments ago that you didn't believe that the two of you, or at least you didn't characterize it as a committed relationship, right?
No, I didn't.
Were you dating other people?
I went on dates on occasion, but nothing that became repeated, so nothing that blossomed into any kind of relationship.
To your knowledge, did Travis know about any of these dates you had with other individuals?
He found out about one, two, actually, early on, if we're talking the same time period.
Okay. And in this time period, this late 2007 time period, these dates you went on, did he react positively or negatively to knowing that you went on these other dates?
One, he just teased me, and the other one very negatively.
You weren't in a relationship with him. What was the problem?
The one that he reacted negatively to was a guy that he hated.
Who was that?
His name is John Dixon.
So Mr. Alexander believed, or would it be your impression that Mr. Alexander believed that he had a right to tell you who you could date at this time period?
Objection being overruled.
He just specifically didn't want me to date that guy.
Okay. And was that okay with you for Mr. Alexander to dictate whom you dated?
Objection in this case, the evidence, she never indicated that he dictated, just that he didn't want her to date the guy.
Rephrase your question.
Okay, so you go out on a date, you're not his girlfriend. You go out on a date with somebody named John Dixon, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Alexander doesn't like Mr. Dixon, right?
Yes.
So because of that, you're not supposed to date John Dixon because Travis doesn't like him?
Not date him and not even be his friend.
Because Travis says so, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So you could date who you wanted unless Travis told you no, right?
Yeah, it seemed that way.
all the time when he's having sex with you behind closed doors or on your porch, right?
Objection. Foundation as to when he's having this sex and foundation as to when he dated John Dixon. It'd be different
Same time
times.
period, Judge.
No, he can't testify. She can't, not him.
Sustained.
Fall of 2007. He comes over, he ejaculates on your face, throws candy at you, has you having sex behind closed doors, and you're not in a committed relationship, right? The fall of 2007, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
That's the same time period you dared to defy Mr. Alexander and go out on a date with John Dixon, right?
Objection. This is the testimony. She didn't say that she defied him. He was just upset about it. The characterization is what's objectionable.
Sustained, rephrase.
When did you go out with John Dixon?
It was actually right before the fall, late August, I think the very last weekend in August.
So Mr. Alexander expressed his anger in the fall of 2007 about you going on a date with Mr. Dixon, right?
Yes, he found out the morning we were leaving for Havasupai.
Okay. But it didn't stop him from having sex with you, right?
No.
Ejaculating on your face didn't stop him from doing that, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, it didn't stop him from that.
And it didn't stop him from going to Havasupai with you, right?
No.
Did it stop you from dating John Dixon again?
Yes.
Did it stop you from really dating anyone else again?
I went on a couple more dates during that time and on through the next year.
Okay. Did you tell Travis about those, or did you try to keep those a secret?
No, I learned to stop telling him anything about my social life regarding that. I didn't tell him about John. He found out.
Okay. I have to ask again, with this state of affairs, why not cut the proverbial cord? Why not break up with this guy who's telling you you can date him, you can't date him? Why not put an end to it?
Well, I mean, right now we're kind of focusing on the negative things. There were things he did that made me feel like $1 million. Very
Describe
special.
those things for us.
It was less what he did and just more how he treated me at times. He would say little things that were sentimental and had meaning between us. He got me little gifts, nothing expensive, but it was more the thought and just the gestures that he did. And he still would allude to the fact that he wanted to marry me, even though I don't know that he was very serious.
Kept telling you things you wanted to hear?
Yeah, he did.
Kept promising, oh, come on, Jodi, come on, maybe I'll marry you someday, right?
No, it wasn't quite like that.
How was it?
If I did something that he liked or that pleased him in some kind of way, like something I said or something I did, he would just look at me kind of with this enigmatic smile and say, marry me. And it wasn't like an actual proposal, but, it was kind of a joke. But I took it as a compliment.
Why would you take that as a compliment?
Because he only said those things when I did something that would merit me being a good wife, potentially.
I'm sorry, the last part you said?
Being a good wife. Like, if I did something that might be in line with that, I took it as a compliment because that was my goal at the time. And that's what I wanted to become.
Okay. Did you want to become his wife? Travis's wife?
that was my desire for a while until probably after Havasupai.
Okay. What changed after Havasupai that made you decide, I don't want to marry this guy?
My feelings for him didn't necessarily change, but in my mind, we had such a bad fight that morning. He said some very ugly things to me that it was a boundary we had never crossed before. And I couldn't imagine marrying somebody that had said those things to me, or raising children with a man who their father had said those things to their mother, kind of thing. That's how I imagined it.
What kind of things are we talking about?
He said,
Objection, Pearson.
Not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, the effect on the listener.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the afternoon recess. Please be back in the designated area at 3:15. Please remember the admonition.
Please stand for the jury.
You may be seated. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. You may step down, Ms. Arias. Counsel, please approach.